Hello everyone, and welcome to the 13th episode of the Little Thespian Podcast. On today's episode, we talk to the bubbly personality herself, actress, singer, and so much more, the amazing Mia Cooper Graham. So without further ado, let's hop into lucky number 13 of the Little Thespian Podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 13th episode of the Little Thespian Podcast. In today's episode, we have the bubbly personality herself, actress, singer, and so much more, Mia Cooper Graham. How are you, Mia?
Hi, I'm doing so well. I'm so excited to be joining you today.
Yeah, I like every guest that I'm having on. I just love having so many people on that I love talking to. It's just like, and everyone's so different. I was saying this to Pat last episode, where like I ask everyone on the podcast, how do you get into theater? And people are like, well, I started when I was like 4. I started when I was 6, or it's like it magically just pops up. And it's crazy how people are so different, but yet follow the same path in a way. Especially when we talk about theater. I cannot wait to talk all things theater with you. It's been a while, like we were talking about, but it's always good to catch up. So
always good. I'm excited.
All right, so before we jump into the first question, I just want to let everyone know, like we were talking about before, we are in Code Red here in Montreal, which means, guys, like I said, and like I did last time, wear a mask. Hand sanitizer, it actually helps a lot, somewhat.
Oh, yeah.
Watch your hands, though, and keep your distance. Also, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, that's why I'm wearing pink. So always show your awareness towards big things like that. September was actually Suicide Prevention Month. So always talk to someone if you can. We also want to show that we are against everything that's been happening to Joyce in regards to what's been happening over in Joliet. It's terrible over there. So enough of the house stuff that we need to worry about. And let's hop into episode 13. So, Mia, I'm going to go with the first question, as we always do here, in regards to how exactly did you get into theater?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about this in a while. I think like you were saying, some people start when they're really young. I guess I did a couple like elementary school plays. So nothing big or official. I think every year pretty much since I was like 10, I just did the little, we did like little passion plays for Easter time at my church. So those were like the small ways. But I think I really started getting serious about it. In high school, actually, my brother was in theater at his school, and he did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And he played Billy, the one with the stutter. And I was so impressed and so entranced by it that I was like, you know what? I want to do that too. So that's when I started taking it seriously. It was maybe 15 years old. Yeah.
Wow. Honestly, I think you're one of the first people that I've talked to that it's almost inherited from a sibling. But I don't know, that's great. Like, I know for me, basically it started when I went on a high school trip to Stratford, Ontario. As awesome. A lot of people know, that's an amazing place for theater, especially Shakespeare and whatnot. Yeah, to be almost inherited, like I said, into theater from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a big play in a
memorable
way.
One, yeah.
Definitely memorable. And with a stutter, I know the smallest characters that you sometimes just have some sort of nick or something that happens to that character is always the one that stands out to me.
I agree.
And it's that's awesome. That is awesome.
He ended up going into it used to be called Call, but ALC theater. So he went to Abbott and did theater for a bit. So then I went to Abbott and did theater. So it really is, I guess, a bit of an inherited thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, to go off of that, you were in ALC for a bit. Like we were just talking to Pat about. How was ALC compared to Prof? Because you did both.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good question. It is different. I think that doing Call ALC theater was like my stepping stone. Because I also took, it was a broader program. So I also took like film courses and photography courses to figure out what route I wanted to go. So it was like a preparation for me to decide that I wanted to study it more intensely in professional theater. I was the only one in my class in my professional theater class who ever got to work with Andy, because I was in Call Theater, ALC. And I always told them, like, I'm so sad that none of them got to work with him because he was so helpful in terms of opening me up as an actor. So I think that ALC is really good in terms of it gives you a lot of stage experience of being out there. Other than that, I think that it's just Prof is a more in-depth version where you study and learn the specifics with voice, with movement, with creating your own pieces. Yeah.
And we talk about Andy a lot on this because, Andy Cook.
A legend.
Legend. It's crazy. I only did ALC in regards to just doing pop-ins. But just there is some sort of like they both love theater, right? But there's something about ALC that it's just they do it because they love it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And as much as Prof is the same thing, but it's more business oriented, I would say. And I don't know, it's they're both great in their own ways. You did some great stuff over there. You did Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
when you were in ALC. So how was taking on one of the most well-known musicals, but yet also one that not many people seem to gravitate to unless it's like Halloween per se, if we're talking about October, because of the giant plant.
That's true. I never thought of it that way, but you're totally right. A lot of people don't necessarily know about Little Shop, just because it's not one of the big, famous, extravagant ones musically. So much fun visually, in terms of the set and the costumes. I loved that. That's often the most exciting part for me of any of the shows that I did at Abbott, is getting to see all the visual elements. I think it's also impressive. But I think that one was a really weird, like transition period for me, with regards to acting, because I am from a very musical family and upbringing, but I'm like horrified to sing in front of people by myself. So it was a weird process, dealing like and figuring out my way around my stage fright, which is a lot of why I didn't like get any big roles, which is fine with me. I didn't audition well, with the singing aspect, but I got to be, and this is a small role, but I got to be the first stage of the plant. So it was my hand in the pot doing this little routine thing, and they literally fit me inside a table. They said, okay, squish under this table. We built it for you to squish into, and it was like a hand puppet thing. So that was a small role, but like so much fun. And that was a good one to teach me that like the size of a role never matters. Oh yeah. I think that one was a really fun one to be able to also watch everyone else perform.
Yeah.
Because when you get small roles, you also have an opportunity to study other actors, your fellow peers, and watch them grow throughout their characters and revel in their performances and everything, which I love to do. I love to study my castmates, and watch them work too.
I was talking to Pat about this too, in regards to just having those small roles, and those small roles could be either the most challenging or it can just teach you so much. Like I was saying to him, like I never had a starring role, but I was always ensemble, and ensemble was great because I found that one, like you said, you learn from your peers, but also it's the fact too where you may get that small role, but that small role can mean so much more in the grand scheme of the story. You know what I mean? Like, okay, like you being the small plant. Well, later on, that plant, spoiler alert, you know what happens come the end of it. But it's crazy because the smallest role could impact the entire story. And I think Andy actually said it. There's no small actors. There's only small roles, or something in that.
Yeah.
Or maybe the opposite.
No small roles, only small actors.
That's what it is.
There you go. I always say, and I am a small actor, so there you
go. So to switch into another role that you did actually at Abbott, but this time it was in professional theater. You played Rapunzel.
Yes.
So how was taking on a Disney princess? I mean, at the time, I don't think she had Tangled, but she's still a very known Disney princess.
Oh gosh, that was so much fun. It was a lot of fun to walk through that show and to be doing Sondheim crazy crazy musical, and it was a difficult score. So like the most work was in background harmonies, more than anything. And choreography wise, we had 31 people in the cast, and that had to fit, and that all had to dance and fit on stage. So I think those were the little challenges, but in the end, I think that was such a cool journey, in many ways for an actor to just have fun and embrace these stories that we all know, like you were just saying. Little Red Riding Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, and Rapunzel and all that. Tangled is my favorite Disney movie.
Well, that's ironic, isn't it?
So exactly. So I was really excited to get to be my favorite little Disney princess. And the best part was the hair. Yeah, I have I have the second half of the wig at home.
Wow.
I say second half because it was 10 feet long total.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so that was the part that caused the most adventures, and the most fun. I loved working with this awesome prop and costume piece, and it was heavy and messy and clumsy, but another, like, a really good way to learn the physical aspects of acting. And I think it's not all that often where you have a character has one permanent prop that they always have to work with. So it was fun to get to delve into that as an actor, because I didn't always, I hadn't previously discovered that side before. So I think the music and the dancing and all of the things that went wrong, but that we had to work around, were a really good exercise to work your actor muscles.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I can say too, that was actually the first show I ever saw at Abbott. Because of the fact too, I didn't know if I was going to actually go see it or not. I bought tickets, and then I'm like, okay, well, this was not long after my audition for Prof.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. I was going to be like, do I want to see it and then potentially not, potentially get into Prof?
Mm-hmm.
But I got the call or the message, the envelope in regards to the mail the day before. So I got yes, and then I'm like, you know what, I'm going.
That's
I went,
awesome.
and I can honestly say I knew I didn't make a mistake the minute I walked in.
That's
because
awesome.
The costume and design and everything a part of that show floored me. I also then saw you guys practice in regards to Jack Theater on Facebook.
Yes.
And I'm like, my God, what am I getting myself into? This is amazing. Yeah, honestly, it was incredible. Into the Woods, during that point, later made me want to go watch everything else in regards to Into the Woods. And that was the first show I ever watched at Abbott.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then later on, I'd meet all you guys, and it would be a great 3 years. But yeah, it's crazy because what are the chances? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And honestly, what are the chances of you playing your Disney princess role? Like, it's not, you know what I mean?
I know, yeah. And that wasn't a part that I was going for or anything. So it was a big surprise when I got the cast list. I was like, oh, sure. That's a great surprise.
Yeah, for sure I'll play Rapunzel. No problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll take it.
And so you've played a couple of musicals, but you also did an amazing comedic role, of which I want to talk about, because we just did it together on Cloak and Dagger. and it's called You Can't Take It With You. So how exactly was taking such a hilarious role in Mr. Depina and playing that as were you Mr. Depina or were you Mrs. Depina? I couldn't remember.
I was Miss Depina. We
Okay.
gender bended, yeah.
And how exactly was taking one of the most hilarious shows I know, and putting it on at Abbott with like everything a part of that show is stunning. I still look at the pictures now and I'm like, wow, how
It's
exactly?
beautiful design.
But yeah, how was that? Like with your cast at the end? Like this was literally right before you guys were graduating, pretty much, right? It was your third year show.
It was the one right before the last semester.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh. That one was awesome. It's so much of a different ball game, doing anything dramatic and then switching to a comedy. Yeah, I think we were just excited to delve into it when we found out that that's what we were going to be doing. We had read it the year before, like as a class exercise, and then now we were getting to, give life to these characters that we grew to love. Yeah, that was another one where I totally didn't expect for that to be the role that I was going to be delving into. It was so fun. It was a bit of an adventure as we went along because, as I said, it was a gender bent. So it's originally Mr. Depina, and we just made it Miss Depina. And I think the funnest part is that we, like the whole time, we had the costume designer by our side the whole time, trying to make it visually as quirky as the character was. So it was so cool to see Julie Bryant's designs and to see her vision come to life and to work with her every step of the way. I think it was just so much fun to learn all about comedic timing. I thought it was so daunting. But I think that a lot of the characters' funny moments are all based on timing and milking the awkwardness and everything. So it's kind of something that you have to just keep trying until you get the groove right. And it was a role where I really had to gauge the audience. So I heavily depended it on laughter at certain moments, or on whether the other actors would respond in the right amount of time. Then I can, keep going with my whatever shtick it is at that moment. Or if the audience is really laughing, then I can milk the silence a little more and before I leave. But yeah, that was I think one of the biggest learning experiences in terms of getting something new and different to study and to have under your belt, to be able to bring forward for the future in any more acting gigs. Yeah, so much fun.
And so in regards to that, do you have any words of wisdom for people that might want to jump into theater? Because I know we've been talking about musicals. A lot of people love musicals. A lot of people love comedy, but they don't know that comedy can also be a play. You know what I mean? In regards to playing on the stage and just making a fool of yourself, which is always fun. Or anything dramatic. So do you have any words of wisdom for people that might want to jump in?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever thought of this before, actually. I mean, I think a general piece of advice or wisdom, I would say just as much as you can, throw yourself into it. whether it's comedy or I love drama. Yeah, I think I I often say I lost a lot of my shame while being in theater school. So I'm not really embarrassed by anything anymore, because you kind of have to embarrass yourself over and over and over again when you're studying acting, because you have to be able to reveal yourself. And it's a little cliche to say don't be afraid, and it's normal if you are afraid, because as much as actors want to be super confident, we all get scared. I think that's another thing to embrace too, maybe, that's human and it's normal. So if you're into acting and wanting to pursue it, but you still have a bit of stage fright, that's okay. And I would encourage you to still go after it. And research beforehand if you want. Figure out your taste, and what you need to work on, maybe. And maybe seek out what your weaker points are, and figure out a way to dabble a bit in the things that scare you. But again, I think I'd say just embrace it, the human parts of you, and the parts of yourself that you're more scared to reveal, because those are often the things that will make you a better artist.
Lovely put. I can't really add anything in regards to that. Unless the only thing I would say is you'll never know unless you try, right?
Yes.
So Amen. You might as well, if you want to do it, just try it, and you'll see from there. You'll know instantaneously. Usually, when you're doing theater, the minute you hop on stage, you might be scared, yes, but then eventually, it almost just becomes part of you in a way. I guess is the best way to put it. I mean, anything backstage too. You'll never know unless you put your art out there. You know what I mean? It's that simple.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't always have to be about like what we're saying doesn't just apply to acting.
No.
I think anything with regards to art, again, like Matt was saying, even if it's with backstage stuff, I say go for it. There's only good that can come out of it, and you'll, like he's saying, you'll never know till you try.
Exactly. Yeah. So right now I'm actually going to say who's going to be coming on next week. And next week we'll be having Erin Walsh join us, singer, songwriter, and just an amazing person, all the way from Vancouver. So we actually don't have someone from Montreal. She's joining us from Vancouver, so it's a bit of a time difference. We're going to see, we're probably doing it next Friday, but it's a 3-hour time delay. So we're kind of, we're going to see. But Erin Walsh will be on next episode of the Little Thespian Podcast. But right now, we are back with Mia. So, Mia, you also were a part of a show of which just came in right before quarantine happened. So, can you tell us a bit more about Shed?
Yeah. So I myself, along with our director, Tracy Lee Campbell, and my co-creator, Riley Wilson, we created this show called Shed. And like Matt said, we performed it just before all this COVID madness. And that was my first professional credit. And this show was a 2.5 year adventure. As much as we would love to say that we sort of threw everything together in 2 months, that's not really how creating your own work from scratch works most of the time. And this was actually the original idea came from Tracy Lee, who was one of our Abbott teachers. And she went to coffee with me one day and she said, I have this idea. I think that it would be great to start some artistic work about specifically centering around modern body image and eating disorders specifically. For anyone who had done the professional theater program, we all have this project at the end of third year where you have to share a mime representation of usually a certain point in your life that you went through, something that you've been through. And Tracy Lee said she had seen that a couple of us had dealt with eating disorders, and it was a surprise to a lot of the faculty how many of us had been through that. So I brought a few others on board, mainly Riley, and we sort of took it on and said, okay, we're gonna make whatever we make, and it'll be based on our experiences. And that's what became Shed in the end. And it was a multidisciplinary presentation. That was important to me in the creation process, was to make sure that I include different mediums of performance, whether it's poetry, song, movement, lighting and sound visuals. Because I know I myself, whenever I got the chance to see plays, there was always something different that caught my eye, and that really stuck out to me. So I wanted to make it as accessible to everyone as possible. Another part of that was we did want to end up creating some form of revenue, whether that was $10 by the end of it, that would be fine. But we wanted to make it also accessible to anyone who is on a budget. So we made it pay what you can. And that was something that I was happy with, was to make sure that someone like myself would be able to go see that show and pay what I could at the time also. But yeah, it was a big journey, and it was a very a surprising feeling, being able to say that after graduating, I made a play. Of course, equal work with Riley and some contribution with Tracy Lee. But yeah, it's a surprising thing to be able to put yourself out there in a very vulnerable way. Yeah.
Have you thought about furthering like your writing as well in theater? I know, like for me, I've been writing a play for Fringe for also 2 years.
Yeah.
But it's I know for me, I feel like you almost get like a writing bug. You know what I mean? Where you do one and then you're like, wait a minute, no, this might also be able to do this, or I might want to do this. So do you have any plans to write more in the future, you think?
I think that's a great question. First of all, I'm stoked that you have anything writing-wise. I always encourage that, and of course that would be more possible once COVID calms down. But yeah, I think like you said, there's a certain writing bug that you kind of get where when you get success or excited about something that you wrote, then you just want to keep going and you get more ideas and more possible artistic ventures to go through. Before COVID became a pandemic, our plan was to specifically take Shed a little further. We had a couple little avenues that we could take it with trying to sort of spread the story or the message throughout different communities and change it up a bit because I think that's our challenge now, is we're revisiting it and trying to see what avenues we could take it, because a live show is a little difficult now. But I think a big important thing for us with rewriting or revisiting it is including more diversity in the cast and in the writing, creating process. I think that it was a great way to start, to have specifically mine and Riley's stories, because that's who are performing and creating it. But of course, expanding that would be amazing, and that's what we want. We want to be able to have people take part in it and feel like they're seeing more of what their experience is. And that's an important thing for me too, with writing in general, going forward, because I think that's a direction that society's pushing forward in, and I'm so for it. Yeah, I think that's something I would need to consider going forward, which is great. Yeah, I think I'm definitely looking to creating more in the future. I don't know necessarily the specifics of it. Lately, I've been on more of a slam poetry ride with writing on certain topics that I'm passionate about. So I guess that could maybe one day turn into something, but I'm fine with just figuring it out at the moment and seeing what I can do in the meantime. Figuring out how to branch out into maybe the online performance world.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing now. In regards to digital theater, we're talking about this at one point on here, where it's just like we were talking about it. My theater company, we're talking about it, but the problem is like, yes, we can do the show online. The problem with it, however, is getting just not people to come and view it, but it's the problem of kind of allowing them to feel it more.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're more in the space itself, it does something. It just does. I don't know what it is, but it does. And we're also talking about what theater is going to be like. When stuff comes back and what stories will be told. So, I mean, in regards to writing, just taking the time and just living life, because it's usually when stuff just pops up. We were talking about how theater just sparks, but it's also the writing can just, well, now there's something about race that I might want to talk about because of all the racial stuff that's been going on, sadly, in the world.
Yeah.
and then all sorts of other issues just pop up in regards to the world. So it can spark from anywhere. You know what
Exactly. Oh yeah. And yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying with regards to the difference between live theater and how you can engage the audience more, and how going to see something like that is totally different from watching it on a screen.
Mm.
And that's the thing too, is there's usually a difference between film acting and stage acting, and this has become, I think, like this weird in between that we're all trying to figure out. Because as much as I'd love to say yes, I'm trained for film acting, I'm not really. We had like one class out of the 3 years, as we know. So I'm mostly otherwise trained in stage acting. So figuring out this like tiny little screen, you know, and that if we're trying to look for acting projects to take part in, this is probably what it's going to be, especially now that we're in red zone procedures now. So I don't know. It's a bit of an unknown future situation that I guess we'll have to see as we go.
I'm sure it's going to be bright. I'm not. It's just right now. It seems like don't get me wrong. I love digital theater. The problem with it, however, like I said, is there's no connection. I mean, there is, but there isn't. You know
it's
what I mean?
Not the same.
It's not. And in regards to like comedies and whatnot, I mean, we talk about it in theater that you play to the audience, right?
Yes.
And especially with comedy, what audience? I mean, my audience would basically be the camera.
Yes, exactly. I mean? Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. It's all new.
It is. And unfortunately, we have 2 more questions, Mia. I want to continue this. I really do.
Totally.
Yeah, we have 2 more questions. So one is going to talk about one show that we have not talked about, which was your last show you did at Abbott, Gut Girls, which, my God, I remember that vividly. Amazing show, and amazing where they did it, how they did it. But the stuff that they were making for Gut Girls, people were asking in this, they're like, did they, like, how exactly did they do the sausages? I'm like, I can't talk about that. I don't know how. But they wanted me to ask you in regards to Gut Girls, how was it playing such a different place that you usually don't play, especially in regards to the Casgrain theater stage, you had to play in a studio. So how was the difference shifting back to the studio?
Gosh, yeah, that was it's true. I had forgotten till now how different it was staging wise. Yeah, we switched from the big stage to our main workspace studio, and it wasn't just us acting on one side and the audience on the other side. We did an alleyway theater setup. So for those who don't know, there's this space in the middle of a room where you act up and down, and there's audience on this side and there's audience on this side. So it was very different. A big part of the rehearsal process was blocking. And Tracy Lee's rule with directing us was every 10 seconds move, because you're always going to be blocking someone. But if 3/4 of the audience can see you, great. In the next 10 seconds, they'll see you if they're not now. So that was actually a big part of it in terms of learning that play, was that we had to make do that way and make use of our space as much as we could. And yeah, Gut Girls is what it's called. It was set like not in modern day, and Cockney accents mostly, but it very much focused on the class separation. So we had the rough, tough five gut girls, and then we had the sort of posh RP English class and a couple other characters, but very literally like full of guts. The props were guts and intestines and carcasses of animals. There was liquid fake blood that we had to use and dip into and mop around the stage every night, and our costumes were all splattered with blood. So it was definitely a new adventure in that way. Yeah, and we did a lot of accent work. Because as much as we all had to learn a proper RP or a Cockney accent, the script is actually written phonetically. So it's weird to look because you'd see things like spelled wrong, and you don't know how to say it, but then you realize that's how it's pronounced if you put the thick accent onto it. So that was a whole layer of acting that we hadn't tackled previously. And then it's so sad. It's a sad story. So it was filled with some heavy content, dealing with issues of sexual assault and class abuse, and slavery and all this, and heavy poverty. So it was a whole other ball game, having to delve into those kinds of things. Yeah, I had to learn how to cry on stage or how to get myself there, which was different and interesting because of the alleyway stage setup. You're much closer to people in the audience. In a more comedic sense, like I was not good at dealing with how close we were to people, because also in that well, in the studio room, it's a black box room, fully black, big black curtains, and there was no light really. So for scene changes, you kind of have to blindly go, and I would bump into set pieces, and you'd hear some people going ow and stuff backstage because it was all very clumsy sometimes when you're in the dark. But yeah, I think it was a perfect piece to challenge us with. Yeah, posed a lot of new stuff.
That's the perfect segue to my last question. So I want to know, and many people want to know. I asked this question in regards to almost all my people that I've had on here. What has been your most challenging role you've had at Abbott, and what has been your most rewarding? Because we have talked about most of your roles, and my God, they are so different, to put it lightly. But they also are just very captivating, all of them, in their own separate ways. So what has been your most challenging and most rewarding roles at Abbott?
Good question. It's a very good question. Wow. Most challenging? Oh, that's a hard one. I think that they were all really rewarding in a lot of ways. I'd say the one that maybe not challenging or rewarding, but the one that helped me try something new was like right at the beginning of call. I Andy gave me Antigone. And that I was really thankful for, because it was something that helped me have confidence. I think the most rewarding might have been Annie in Gut Girls. Yeah, I think that it was something that that got to really, I got to feel with, like, right along with the audience, the whole show. It's intimidating to be so close to them, and to hear them sniffle, but it was so rewarding in the end, because there was a new level of intimacy, and of connection, and I also also had to try and be tough, which anyone who knows me as a person is not of my it's not of my nature. So that I would think that I'd be getting it, and then Tracy Lee would be like, no, keep going, like, it's you're still not quite getting there. So that was that's why that show was really rewarding. Challenging, it might have been Into the Woods, simply because choreography is very difficult for me to pick up, and I think it might be the most challenging just physically, that show. And then I was climbing up my 9.5-foot tower, and then you have to sing and no microphones and everything. So it's it might have just simply physically been the most challenging show for me. Yeah, movement-wise, I prefer more abstract, less structured. So suddenly when I go into choreography, I'm not able to do a lot of this stuff for a while, and I have to practice a lot, and yeah. So I guess that's my answer.
Likewise with that, with the yeah.
Thank you.
Just in regards to singing and acting, those two I can do, but
yes.
Dancing, there's a whole new thing in dance.
Oh yeah.
And even if it seems not complicated to anyone else, the minute they start doing stuff other than like jazz square or stuff like that, I'm like,
oh yeah,
nope.
Thank you. It's not just me.
No, definitely not. Honestly, all the roles I've seen you in, like I said, they're so different, but yet so great. Whether they are dramatic, comedic, or anything in between. In regards to stuff like Rapunzel or any of the other roles you've done, it's every time I watch you, it's amazing. So thank you. You're welcome. And I'm going to shed more light on you very soon. I always do. And again, like I say to almost all my guests, but definitely Mia, it's going to be hard to shine a light. In regards to what you were saying in comedy, or just being so close with an audience, I also wanted to comment on that because of the fact that in my last show as well, I needed to do that with Horse Courser, where I literally needed to make people laugh, but also literally have a rag full of wet socks and actually had to soak people. So that was great. So just embrace it is what I want to say at the end of it. Embrace anything you need to do on stage, and believe me, it will be rewarding in the end.
I agree.
So, as it comes to the end here, thank you, Mia, for being on. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're
welcome.
Been
such a delight.
I try. But yes, guys, this is unfortunately the end of episode 13 of the Little Thespian Podcast. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. If you guys did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe here on YouTube, and check all our stuff down below. So, to shine a light on Mia, like I said, very hard to. She's one of the most caring, loving people I know. And like I said, it was a blast, and I never knew that Into the Woods would actually shape my career as an actor, but it did. So thank you for that, and thank you for being so awesome in regards to acting and just being such a bubbly personality I know and love. So thank you.
Gosh.
And so thank you, Mia. And I hope
Thank you.
I know the future is very bright, and I cannot wait to see it.
Same with you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, guys. We will see you guys on the next episode of the Little Thespian Podcast. Bye, Mia.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. The lights are off. The curtain has fallen. And it's time to say goodbye. Thank you all for joining us on the Little Thespian Podcast. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to ask, either down below or on any of our platforms. On the next episode of the Little Thespian Podcast, we talk to the amazingly talented, gifted actress, songwriter, and singer, Erin Walsh. It's going to be a great time. I truly cannot wait to talk to Erin all things acting, theater, and beyond. It's going to be a great time on episode 14 of the Little Thespian Podcast. If you guys have enjoyed this episode, you guys know what to do. And you guys also know that you guys should check out our description down below for all our social platforms. That is me and Mia down below. So you guys are definitely going to want to check those out. And you guys are definitely going to want to check out episode 14 when it drops with Erin Walsh. I truly cannot wait to talk to Erin all the way from Vancouver, Canada, as we hop into a star-studded month in October with amazing guests also coming on the Little Thespian Podcast. Thank you guys so much for all the support you guys have given us and all the amazing questions you give me each week to talk to people. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe to us. It definitely helps, guys. You guys are already being so amazing with the support, and we just want to thank you guys once again. So, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode, and we will see you all on the next Little Thespian Podcast. This has been your host, Matthew Crandall, and I'll see you all on the next Little Thespian Podcast.